Hello, my name is Lee Adamson, and I'm one of the many volunteers working behind the scenes to bring you today's much anticipated event. And I'd like to welcome you all to 2020 Eco Fair Toronto. Being a virtual event, we can see from the signups that we're having many of you join from the Toronto area, but also elsewhere in Ontario, Canada, and even internationally, which we find very exciting. And to you all, welcome. The event you'll enjoy today is part of a 4-week celebration of the start of a green new decade. Climate scientists have given us 10 years to turn things around. There are solutions. There are awesome people, groups, and businesses making amazing progress. So let's all celebrate their achievements, learn about solutions, imagine what we each can do, and then be inspired to take action. We are very excited about today's program and thankful to the organizers and presenters who have volunteered to make it happen, and to you for joining us. But first, we would like to begin by acknowledging and thanking the Indigenous people of this land. We are hosting the event today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, we respectfully share this land acknowledgement as a way to recognize the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. And we ask all participants to reflect on how we are accountable to these relationships. So, thanks again for joining us. Now, let's get the program started. I would like to turn things over to Ben Melke, an enthusiastic volunteer with StopPlastics in Toronto. So take it away, Ben.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this get-together where we're going to be talking about the movie Microplastic. My name is Ben. I'm a volunteer with StopPlastics, an organization that advocates for alternative single-use plastic. It's a grassroots organization that I joined about 3 years ago at a beach cleanup. So I'm going to start right in with some slides to kind of give you background on StopPlastics. I'm going to switch over to screen share. Okay, everyone can see that. So when I was first introduced to StopPlastics, this is the environment or the things that I saw when I visited my local park. This is at a shoreline close to where I live. You can see it's full of styrofoam and plastic bottles and just things kind of like some plastic soup that's there. And through that, I have some issues here. Oh, what's going on? Okay. There we go. I got connected to StopPlastics. This was a cleanup, the first cleanup that I was a part of. And you can see all the waste that was collected. And besides just collecting the waste that was there on the beach, I got more involved with the advocacy. So StopPlastics has a postcard campaign where they encourage Toronto residents to sign a postcard that go to their local ward member to put a ban on single-use plastics, especially plastic bag. So there we have some volunteers someone dressed up in some plastic bags there to show the extent of plastic in the environment. So we had a quite a successful campaign. And just recently, the Canadian government basically put together a ban on single-use plastics, selected single-use plastics. So we feel that our mandate is switching to make sure that they follow through with those bans. There's been various projects, artistic and creative projects that have come out of collecting plastic through cleanups and also engaging the public. And here we have some, I guess, some good news. Is something I saw a few days ago. A bamboo spoon as opposed to a plastic. It's not great, but it's better, moving in the right direction. This is a picture from today. I went to the beach and saw a plastic straw. So the problem is still ongoing. Hopefully what we get accomplished today, mirroring what Microplastic Madness accomplished in Brooklyn, we want to accomplish here in Toronto. And I think that's the end of my slides. I am going to pass it over to our guests. Okay. I'm going to pass it over to Karen first. Karen, if you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background.
Okay, you need to start my video there, folks. Is it on? Yeah. There we go. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and Wellington Water Watchers to participate in this terrific afternoon. I loved the movie Microplastic Madness, and I learned a lot, and I just loved the journey that these students were on. My name is Karen Rathwell. I am a volunteer with Wellington Water Watchers, and I'm trying to just show my screen here, so I'm hoping that will work. Oh, the host just stopped my video because maybe you're putting my screen on. And so I just wanted to say that Wellington Water Watchers is a not-for-profit based group, community group. And it's dedicated to the protection, the restoration, the conservation of groundwater in the Grand River watershed. And it was initially formed to challenge industrial water withdrawal for packaging in single-use plastic. And with 8 out of 10 residences in Guelph and Wellington County that are dependent on well water for their drinking water, this makes us ground zero for issues regarding groundwater protection. And so we have taken up the sword. And we have permits to take water from our aquifer for bottling or allowing enormous amounts of water to be wasted, our beautiful groundwater to be discarded as waste due to aggregate extraction. And these continue to be our focus. But since these early years, we've expanded our mandate to actually support other community groups that are standing up to protect their local water resources. We know how hard it is to get going community engagement and plan a campaign. And so we are reaching out to other groups in Ontario that need to step up to their community water. It takes a lot of courage for citizens to stand up to corporations, regulatory systems, municipal processes, for example. And so many groups contact us. They're trying to protect their water from aggregate extraction, contamination, nuclear waste storage or development, and government paralysis, and as well as pollution. So our work in water leads us to plastic over and over and over again for many reasons. But most importantly, because of these single serving, single use plastic pieces of garbage that our beautiful groundwater is wrapped in. And how does it make sense to use something for a few minutes and then be left with packaging that will last hundreds and hundreds of years? It just doesn't make sense. There are many great uses for plastic, and we are always going to need it for many reasons, but most importantly, we've got to get rid of this single-use plastic, these beverage bottles. When you look at any of these pictures, you can see that these bottles are clogging our waterways, threatening our earth and the creatures that live in it, and we eating them, we're breathing them, and we're drinking these tiny particles and pieces of plastic. There's got to be a better way. So that's my introduction, Ben. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing about everybody else and answering a few questions.
Okay, I'm gonna pass it over to Susan from the U of T trash team. Susan, you can go ahead.
Great, thanks so much. So my name is Susan. I'm one of the co-founders of the U of T trash team. We're still a relatively new group. We formed in 2017. I'm actually really excited to be on the panel today because it's paired with Microplastic Madness, and a few members of our team, some researchers, were interviewed within this documentary, and it goes quite in depth about the topic of plastic. So we hope to answer more of your questions in today's panel. And the reason we formed is we saw a real need to increase waste literacy. So that includes plastics, which are a predominant form of waste, but also act in our community to help reduce plastic pollution. So we see those things working together. And you can see from some of these pictures, we have a lot of different faces of our team. They represent students from undergraduates, graduate level, and we also have postdocs, staff, and researchers who all work together. And we do this in three main ways. In some of our Q&A, I might touch on a few of them. Our main form is community outreach, which is programs like today, which is speaking to people like you who want to know more so that you can become better informed when speaking with your own friends and family about these topics. We also work in education. We are working with classrooms and coming up with lesson plans to translate this information that we learn in the laboratory. And solutions-based research. So not just learning about plastic, but also looking at some of the ways that we can change how we interact with plastic. And this is an image here of a sea bin, which is our newest project. And this is in the Toronto Harbor. So that's it for me. Our website is here for more details, but I'm sure we'll get into more of this. I'll turn it over now to Jan from StopPlastics to talk a little bit more about herself and the work she does.
Hi, I'm Jan Vanderwall. Can you hear me okay? Hi, can you hear me now? I'm Jan Vanderwall, and I am with StopPlastics. And I became involved in StopPlastics maybe about 5 years ago. I had been traveling in Vietnam and had gone to the Ocean Museum, and next to the Ocean Museum was a beach. And it was alarming to see the garbage on the beach. So I came back to Toronto and I started doing some research and found StopPlastics. So my involvement with them has been getting postcards signed, delivering them to City Hall in Toronto, meeting with counselors, talking about plastics. I also find that we're very involved in educating and informing people about plastic, single use, and alternatives. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to spend some time in Georgian Bay, a lot of kayaking, and seeing the blue dock foam in Georgian Bay, watching people put cigarette butts into the lake. And so I'm hoping to have an influence there as well. I know that we're looking as an archipelago to talk to dock manufacturers and talking about replacing the blue foam. Anyway, that's my involvement with StopPlastics. It's been a wonderful experience working with some very interesting, dedicated volunteers and learning a lot about the environment and climate change and plastic. And now I'm going to turn it over to Haley. You're on, Haley.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. I'm really grateful to be here and participate in this really important conversation. I'm actually just a citizen. I like to say I am a concerned citizen who actually was inspired to start an organization a few years ago with a partner that I met on Twitter, actually, who was speaking about a lot of these plastic issues. Basically, Strawless Toronto was created to help people kind of reconsider their relationship with small plastic, because we see a lot of the big plastics and a lot of the things that are confronted on the street and all over the place that are a little bit bigger, but starting from a small place and reconsidering all those little tiny things that slip into your life without any consideration. So we wanted to get people to start thinking about what they as a citizen can do, not just socially, but politically and within their own life, to spread the message of reducing plastics and have a little bit of fun with it. That was a big emphasis of the work we did. We wanted to get people out to have a social time and also to just kind of like enjoy the process of exploring alternatives and have a little bit of fun, basically. It is a serious topic, but there's a lot of fun that you can have when rethinking your relationship with the things that you bring into your life. And I will pass it back to Ben.
I'm going to pass it along to Karen from Wellington Water Watchers. And the question I have for her is why are so many people still buying water bottles? And does bottled water contribute to the microplastic problem?
Oh, thanks, Ben. Sorry, I think we're good to go now. And those are big questions, and I want to be succinct and be respectful of everyone's time, but I think we should just start at the beginning before I dive into some of this and just say, wow, your timing is perfect. I mean, it was just 2 weeks ago, Ottawa was talking about banning certain plastic items, the single-use part, and I was just thrilled to see this headline. However, for me, of course, with the single-use, single-serving plastic bottles, when they're not included, I was worried about that. You know, you asked me if people are continue to buy bottled water, and yes, it's true, they do, but the market demand is not as secure as it has been. And this is demonstrated by Nestle's recent plan to sell off their wells in Canada and some of the wells in the States and focus on their premium brands. So I think we've made some progress there. Over the years, I've learned that bottled water is purchased by a lot of times by people that come from places where they cannot drink the tap water. And so they don't trust our tap water. And often it's families that can least afford to put some of their budget into buying water. But with very few exceptions, the water in Ontario, in our communities, is as safe as you will find in all of the world. And our municipal systems are top notch, and we can trust the water and what comes out of our taps. I think consumers are beginning to understand there's a huge environmental footprint with bottled water. And so there's lots of reasons not to drink it, and particularly the plastic. And when you look at this is and I know you've seen it before, and I've used it in many presentations, 1955 cover of Life magazine. I was 3 years old. this was the beginning of convenience. This is the beginning when we were taught that if you make it out of plastic, you can just throw it away. Mom doesn't need to do dishes anymore, and life would be easier. And this is the place we have to crawl back from, this convenient place. When I speak to people when I'm out in the community, I'm tabling, or I'm speaking to people in the grocery store and ask them why they are buying plastic bottled water, it's because it's convenient. And so, you know what? Yeah, it's convenient. And so bottled beverages are, not just water, bottled beverage in general. They contribute to this plastic problem, to the microplastic problem. And plastic just does not biodegrade. It's not like a banana peel. It's not like a Kleenex, what will fade back. It photodegrades. And so we're left with plastic that has been around since this ad was formed, promoting, why do the dishes after this cocktail party? Just buy these glasses and throw them out. And these particles that we're getting as this plastic breaks down into smaller and smaller bits it's full of chemicals, and they absorb what's around them in the water, in the soil, which will often be more chemicals, and then they get mixed with our soil, get into our food, mixed with our water, get into the food chain there. And this is where all the microplastics come in. But in general, you were saying, I mean, is it a problem? Yeah, this is a huge problem. And we have to get in front of it. We still can get in front of this problem. We know how. Look at this lake. This is the most polluted lake in all of the world, in India. And it is nothing but these floating plastic pieces, mostly bottles. You asked me if people still buy bottled water. Yes, it's true, but I think that's less and less. And does bottled water contribute to the microplastic problem? Absolutely. The story of what we're ingesting through these, well, that's not finished yet. All the plastic that we're eating, this story will be told by future generations, and we will someday find out what it's doing to us. But we know right now that the chemicals we eat and breathe from all this plastic do have an impact on us, and they've proven to be endocrine disruptors. Most bottles used in Canada are made of PET plastic, polyethylene terephthalate, and they can be identified by the recycling number 1. And it was 2018, a couple of years ago now, when this was the headlines about the microplastics in all kinds of bottled water that was tested from across the globe. And this red dye was put into the water that was in these bottles, and then they put us under special light microscope, and there you go. And so we are drinking these bits and pieces of plastic, and we're eating them too. And we know that these bottles photodegrade, and this is waiting to get shipped somewhere, sitting out in the sunlight, who knows for how long, a week, a few days. And when it gets to the other side, and when it's in a warehouse warmed up, and the plastic plastic photodegrades, and all the chemicals leach into the plastic. The manufacturing process itself will also produce impurities and that leach into this plastic. And so again, we're getting them through the bits, we're getting them just by that osmosis process. And so this is a big risk. And I think we're learning even more recently how much plastic we're eating. And here's 2019, a study from University of Victoria. 90,000 microplastic particles every year on average. And this is an American, some of these numbers are from the American database, but it's astounding. And then even worse, just 2 weeks ago, this study out of Trinity College in Dublin, where they were measuring the plastic that babies were consuming, and it wasn't in the hundreds in this case, it was in the millions because of warming up bottles and the bottles being used over and over again, taking apart the bottles, the nipple, the part that holds them on, and they're drinking all of this right from the get-go. Is plastic trouble? Yes, it's trouble. Microplastics, it's trouble in every form. And trouble for us, and trouble for the ecosystems, for every creature. We are causing so much trouble. Those little plastic lids, mother birds think that they are food and feed their babies, and then babies die of starvation because they're eating plastic. And what can we do? We have to give our heads a shake and say, no, we have to stop purchasing single-use plastic and start to make some changes. And maybe it won't be so convenient, but if we cannot do this one little baby step, we're never going to get to the big stuff that we really do have to give up. So I'll just stop my slideshow for there, and I can come back to it when we get to the next set of questions. Over to you.
Okay, Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Susan. I'm going to talk a bit about the movie. I thought it was an amazing movie. I really wish that this grade 5 class in Brooklyn was my grade 5 class. Using microscopes and going to the beach. It was amazing use of the animation with the kids' drawings. Interesting facts about 5 trillion pieces of microplastics. And also just your collaborator Chelsea Rochman saying poop. That was pretty interesting. So my question for you is just basically the movie was about microplastics in the ocean. So what can we expect to see? Can we expect to see plastic in the sea, the ocean floors? Does plastic the aquatic bodies? Susan?
Great, thank you. Yes, and I agree with you. It would be wonderful to be have a class like that when we were in grade 5, though I do remember some great experiences. And I'll get to that just in a second, but to something that Karen touched on, talking about plastics and that it never really disappears. So we'll start with a very simple definition of a microplastic, and that's anything less than 5 millimeters in size. They're either designed that size on purpose for production of new materials, or to go like the microbead, which is a type of microplastic, or they are secondary microplastics, which are those smaller fragments that you see and become smaller and smaller to the point that you may not see them anymore. But what do we know about here? Lake Ontario, I'm just pulling up the exact number that I have here, is not just Lake Ontario, but plastic is found in all the Great Lakes. And there's been some models that have estimated roughly 10,000 tons of plastic of all sizes are entering the Great Lakes every year. And these concentrations, you can assume or imagine they're in more populated industrialized areas that you may see these. So we know it's out there. And for microplastics, the contamination is there. This is still a relatively new field, so we're discovering new things, and we're at the early stages of being able to inform what that danger may be. But yes, they are here, they are entering the lakes, and microplastics are certainly a portion of this amount that's reaching the Great Lakes every year. And the concentrations, you hear a lot about the ocean gyres and the garbage patches out there, and the densities being found here are almost the same, if not a little bit more in certain areas of the Great Lakes. And once it's in there, it's plastic. Some float, some sink, some go right to the bottom. We found, not me or our team personally, but there have been reports of plastic on the deepest parts of the ocean. And this is only parts of the ocean that we've explored. There's a lot of undiscovered territory in the ocean to explore. The bottom line is plastic truly is ubiquitous. That's a tough word, but practice on it. It's everywhere, right? So it's just great to be able to have movies like this that are starting with the younger generation. And in this film, they actually took such an active role in learning and researching this information for yourself. That's what I would encourage everyone after today, is taking all of this new tidbits that we're all sharing, but then go and do some of your own personal research and see what you can find on that, and see what, what matches up with what you think about plastic, and what are some new things that you don't already know. I hope I answered the question. If there's any follow-up, of course, let me know.
Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Jan. I'm going to ask about what you have to say about recycling. Is recycling addressing the issue of plastic pollution? And what are the ways that we can get past recycling as a solution?
Recycling actually is a hoax for a number of reasons. One, a lot of plastic does not make it into the recycling bins. And another thing is that a lot of plastic is not recycled in the first place. A lot of garbage is recycling is contaminated, so it goes to garbage. And then recycled plastic generally is only downcycled a number of times before it ends up in landfill. So it really is not what it's made out to be. And the other thing about this whole idea of recycling is, if you take my metal water bottle, it will be manufactured, taken to a store where I will purchase it, and that is the end of that carbon footprint. Whereas my plastic water bottle, I purchase it, and then it goes hopefully into recycling. And then we're using carbon to pick it up, to take it to a recycling facility where it will get melted down, recycled, redistributed, and downgraded again and again. So the carbon footprint around recycling is enormous. Really, we need to stop with the single-use plastic items. Over to you, Ben.
Sorry for just jumping in there. I did want to add one small thing into the topic of recycling, because this has been in the news a lot as well. I agree with everything Jan said, and would just wanted to build on top of that is, to help with this recycling. It's a bit of a broken system. So it's because we're producing so much plastic every day, and a lot of plastic that can't be handled by these systems, right? So if we're looking for improvements, we're looking to shift to a plastic economy where these end-of-life products have a value. So that helps create more incentive for these products, so that these systems and the producers have more of an incentive to actually make the differences. And that's not the only solution, but I think it's an important thing for us to acknowledge, is that the current structure, there's promise there, but there need to be some fundamental shifts to how the value is being placed on what's in these systems and markets.
Great, thank you. And so I'm going to pass it over to Haley. So my involvement with StopPlastics has actually changed how I go about in the world. I will no longer buy plastic water bottles. I will no longer take a straw with me. I do have a stainless steel straw that I have available. So my question to Haley is, how has your habits changed? How have your plastic consumption habits changed?
A great question, thanks. So the ways that I've changed my habits around plastic have kind of come in a few different ways. I've taken it on as a little bit of a hobby, so it doesn't feel so much like a restriction. It feels like a fun way to kind of like make things for myself instead of buying new products all the time. I often find a way to make it myself. If I wanted to try making my own shampoo, or transitioning into like making my own hot sauce or things like that, if I select a few things from my life that I know I frequently buy in plastic or are possible to buy in plastic, what are the ways that I can buy it without its packaging? Can I buy the peppers to make hot sauce and just make it at my home and fill a mason jar? Can I just buy a refillable container of apple cider vinegar and use that for my shampoo and conditioner? So thinking about it as a fun way to have new hobbies and ways to get together with friends pre-COVID. Hopefully we can do that again and have kind of a hangout where you can transition some of those things in more of an enjoyable way. The way that I like to start thinking about what I can transition is almost like a system. Think about all the different rooms or spaces that you spend time in, and look at what's plastic. Are those things that you buy frequently? Do you have to refill that thing? Can you find a place to refill it, like a zero waste store? Karma Co-op is a place that I found a few years ago and really enjoyed being a member at. They have all sorts of bulk products and you can literally refill almost everything, even tofu without packaging. So again, it's kind of this fun thing where if you start looking at it as an opportunity and a way to not put so much pressure on yourself, but think about what is possible within your means and where you can make the most impact within your means again. That's kind of the way that I've started thinking about it for myself and my own habits. I'll pass it back to Ben. Thanks.
Okay, so question for Karen. What do you suggest as alternatives to bottled water, and why is this important to Wellington?
Oh, thanks, Ben. I'm going to put my screen share back on. So let's see if we can get it. We're getting faster and better at this. Well, yeah, what are alternatives to bottled water? Well, people do like to drink water, and I know that after a yoga class, you might want to have a nice sip of water. Does it really have to be in a single-use bottle? And so bring your own. And that's, it's so easy to do, to bring your own, to just plan ahead and even use a Brita, keep cold water in the fridge if that's part of it. It's not just about the plastic, of course. I mean, that's what we're talking about today, but it's also about water privatization as far as the bottled water goes. And why would we be giving over a public resource, a public trust to a corporation, give them the power over something we all need, and give them the power to decide who gets it and who doesn't? And so, yeah, we've got to shake our head about bottled water, but all beverages that are put in those single-use bottles, of course, we have to really rethink, as someone said, we have to refuse them. And it takes a while to remember that. I made a personal challenge to stop with the coffee cups when I was working. And if I forgot my reusable cup, that was my penalty that day. I had to go without. And it probably only happened twice before I remembered. You can remember your car keys when you head out the door. You can remember a bottle of water. We've got to start making those changes. There's so many styles. There are lots of them. Their hard plastic is so much safer than that crunchy stuff, that PET plastic to be reusing. But of course, a metal one's nice too, and it can't be damaged. These zero waste supermarkets are just fabulous. And we do have to start thinking about how we're getting our food and storing our food, moving over to plastic storage containers, since I've been learning about plastics, because we're eating that plastic every time we take the lid on and off. So we really have to start using our head. And I was encouraged just recently when Tim Hortons was announcing their new reusable plan. So I'm going to continue with my coffee cup. We've made many of our journeys together, but I'm glad to see they're starting to rethink what their production of waste is, and they're trying to get in front of it. So I'm really pleased about that. And as far as what we can do, we have to refuse plastic in a big way. We need regulations, as the federal government's trying to do, to say, no, I mean, there was only, I don't know, what was it, 30, 40 years ago when smoking was everywhere. And it wasn't until the regulations were changed that we really got rid of it. And how lovely is that, that you're not sitting on a plane or a train when we were able to, is sitting beside someone smoking in a restaurant and out at your park. And so, yeah, we just need to change our habits, because we need to think about our future generations. 7 generations we need to plan ahead for. And piling all this plastic into their world is no way to have them live. Thanks.
Okay, so over to Jan. She's got something to add.
Hi. I wanted to add that when StopPlastics started, we were concerned about banning the bag in Toronto. And lots of people ask what we do with garbage if we don't have plastic bags. So there's a couple of alternatives. This is Bag to Earth, and it is all fiber and it doesn't leak. This is a small one for compost, but you can get bigger ones. And I find that we're producing, sorry, I'm going to start my video. I thought that it was on, and I don't see the icon for it. Okay, sorry. Here's the plastic, here's the Bag to Earth bag made out of fibers. And this size is for composting, but you can get them bigger. And I'm finding, because I'm composting, that all my garbage is dry. And so even a paper bag, when Sobeys is handing out paper bags, or the liquor store, if I don't have my own, that those can be used. And I'm creating so little garbage, I can use that for months. And I also take my newspapers and I fold them up, and they go into my compost also. And sadly, there are still plastic bags coming into most people's homes. Take, for example, your toilet paper bag. There's a bag for garbage. There's bread bags. There's, potato chip bags, potato bags, all kinds of alternatives to plastic bags. So I just wanted to add that, and back to you, Ben.
Great. So the next question I have is for Haley. How did you mobilize your volunteers to take action in your organization, Strawless Toronto, to get the ball rolling on plastic action?
Yeah, so basically the way that we started was from a social media standpoint, and we were really kind of jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak, because a few years ago there was a big movement with Strawless Ocean. Strawless Ocean started in the States and began to bring in other cities, and we kind of replicated the model that they had. And just as individuals and engaged citizens, we decided to take this on ourselves and spread that out within our own social networks. And over about a year, we ended up having maybe 900 people just start following us on Instagram. And that's kind of how we got people to come out to events sometimes. We would send out a blast to everybody and say, this day we're going to do a big cleanup, or we're going to have a pop-up on the street. We would basically just kind of invite our friends. It was really a social thing where we started to meet other people, like some of the folks on this panel. Susan came out one time. I met StopPlastics through this. So it really started just this kind of network of a community of people that you started to see over and over again. And if you start doing it yourself as an individual, it's a nice thing, but it's also really good to go out and find the organizations that are already doing it, or be inspired by things like World Cleanup Day and look for the neighborhood cleanups, because there are often a lot of people out there that are already working towards this. It's just nicer to do it together. And if you can't find somebody that's already doing it, you can start your own thing, which is what I did. So I encourage everybody to just take a look and do some research, like everybody's saying, see what's out there. How can you join in? Maybe start something on your own. I'll pass it back. Oh, and I see there's a question. Someone wants to know where to get tofu without a package. There's a couple of places in Toronto that you can find that. Karma Co-op, it's over in Seton Village near Bathurst Station. It's a co-op, so it's actually a really interesting business model that is, it's not tied to the same kind of Loblaws kind of corporate business model. It's a community-based organization as well. And there's also, I think Bear Market in the East End probably has package-free tofu, and Unboxed Market, I think, in the Little Italy kind of Dundas West area. So there's lots of places in Toronto. If it's a zero waste store, a zero waste grocery store, quite often they'll have something like that.
Okay, so the question to the group now is for everyone who wants to jump in here. What's the best way to talk to friends and colleagues about single-use plastic and plastic use? I know that in my experience, the past past 3 years, I've been known as, like I said, environmental. So I do try and use plastic-free alternatives, but sometimes people prefer single-use plastic. So it starts a discussion, and sometimes the discussion isn't for then and there. But I just want to put this to the group. How do people approach the discussion, topic about single-use plastic to someone who is just, it's not a big deal? Anyone can take that question.
Sure, I can start and kind of share what some of my experiences have been. And I would start by saying, just remember, sometimes you may not see the result of your conversation immediately. So keep that in mind. It takes time to build impact, and it takes time to build, it becoming important to them, right? For you to want to make a change for something. Like, think about any time you've tried to take on getting more exercise or something like that. You have to make a choice within yourself. You know what you should do, but you have to actually feel it. So just, I think, keeping at the conversations, but don't inundate people with information. When there's so much information, you may start to feel like it's too much, I'm going to back away. So that's tend to be my approach, and a bit of a kind of lead by example. I would do simple things like post a picture of me using an item, but not necessarily say, this is how you should do it. And not immediately, but I actually have noticed the conversations with friends have changed. Now people are coming to me with, look what I'm doing, or have you seen this in the news? So I think this is a great time to engage people. It's always a good time, but the awareness and the attention is there. Admittedly, I may live in a bit of a bubble where I'm, interacting with people that tend to have similar mindset. But I do see that even outside of this bubble, there is that awareness shift. So it's a great time, and it's just keep talking and remember, things take time.
So Susan, while you're still there, we've got a question in the chat.
Sure.
And the question is, hi, I live in the UK. Hi, I live in the UK, and it's interesting to hear about what you're trying to do in Toronto. Just wondering, how bad is the plastic problem in your area, and do you have good plastic recycling facilities? So if you want to just take that.
Oh, plastic recycling facilities. I mean, this is a whole other topic. The words I'll throw out are waste harmonization, and what we don't have is good waste harmonization. If you go to the next city over, they do things slightly differently. So while each individual city may have good systems in place, until the harmonization of how we take waste is done in a similar fashion or identical fashion, that's where it gets complicated. I used to work with people out in Vancouver, and in Vancouver, they have phenomenal waste sorting. You can accept much more than you can accept here in Toronto, but even in Toronto, we can accept a lot. So it's the inconsistency of how waste is managed, I think, is where my attention is now focused. I'm more aware of that as a concept. Yeah, I'll turn it back though. I hope that answered your question. I think there were some others on the panel who wanted to contribute to the conversation about plastics.
Hi, I'd like to add something. I once had success with a litter bug throwing a big gulp thing on Bloor Street, and I stopped him and I said, have you ever heard of Immanuel Kant? He was a great German philosopher, and his philosophy was, if everybody does what you do, is the world going to be a better place? And he kind of shrugged and walked off. And 5 minutes later, he came back and he picked up that garbage and he put it in the can and he waved at me. So sometimes I engage people in that kind of a conversation about thinking about, if we all did this kind of behavior, can we make a difference? Over to you, Ben.
Ben, I'll just add my 2 bits here, just on top of what Susan and Jan have said. It's been my experience doing our campaign work that, although I love science and those numbers speak to me, that 10,000 bits of plastic in our Great Lakes, or tons, I mean, every year, whoa, I mean, that makes my head spin. But I know for a lot of people it doesn't. And so I've learned through my water work that it's the science often doesn't reach people. You need to reach them through emotion. And so sometimes talking about the future or showing them how this plastic waste is impacting our ecosystems, our little creatures that are so innocent, sometimes has a really big payoff. And as Jan said, maybe you don't see the immediate, but it may come back to you. And I think that's something that teachers find all the time, that lessons come round again.
Another question from the chat, talking about recommendations about reducing plastic during the pandemic, and the fact that we can't bring our own containers to refill at stores. That's over to Haley.
Yeah, so I think there are some places that are still allowing you to bring your own containers, and if not, they will provide mason jars that you can refill and bring back to them, almost like a deposit program. So you might not be able to have absolute perfection. There's kind of this order of operations with public health, I'm sure, where the priority is making sure that people's safety is paramount. And plastic is definitely part of this safety issue, but I think we're all learning the ways that this virus spreads. And I think that the plastic waste conversation is starting to come back up with this new policy from the federal government. And I think if we can be a little bit kinder to ourselves sometimes and think about how our individual actions are impacting things in our own lives, making sure that what we can control is controlled, but there's a bigger move that's on the go right now. And I think that we have to just be kind to ourselves and do what we can, and make sure that the pressure on those that do make decisions, that have businesses, that are in government, our job is to keep those people in check, I think.
So
Great, thank you. Sorry, just a question for Jan from the chat. What about biodegradable or biocompostable bags for organic waste? Are they really eco-friendly?
Well, my understanding is that they're not. And I've seen some evidence that suggests that they don't biodegrade as we thought they do, and they contaminate compost. I don't know if anybody else can add to that, but I would say no. Is there anybody else that has more up-to-date information on that? It's something I personally avoid.
Sure, I can add on to that a bit. This is something too that I'm personally educating myself a bit more on, so I don't have all the factual information, but I'll leave the big picture messages. Yes, it is a challenging item as well, so it's not necessarily the solution or alternative. I think it still goes back to looking at how materials in these waste systems are valued, like what's going to incentivize change in how materials are designed. So these bioplastics, I think they start with the good intention that it may degrade back, but there still is some form of element to it that doesn't disappear either. So what is that something that causes another problem that we don't know about? So I think it's really going back to how we use materials and, you know, do you need an individual bag or can you bring a reusable bag versus using bioplastic instead of a typical plastic? The ideal situation would neither, and to use something that you can continue to use. That's all I'll say on that topic, but it is something that I am personally looking into a bit more as well, because it's something that I would love to know what the definitive answer is.
There's another
Great,
question.
thank you. Another question from the chat. Talking about, as connected with the movie, I really liked how they brought the kids to City Hall and advocate for the change in the cafeteria, going from styrofoam to least compost. Has anyone had experience? I know StopPlastics has been in City Hall and spoken in front of City Council a number of times. Has anyone else had experiences with talking to their elected representatives about plastic? It's open for anyone.
Can I answer that question? StopPlastics, we've gone and talked to councillors at City Hall. It depends on your councillor and it depends on who you're meeting with. I mean, we've been impressed with some and been really disappointed with others, but that's not to say that we need to continue to do that. They are elected officials and it is their responsibility to provide for a clean environment and to also monitor how much we're paying to recycle and to remove garbage. So less is best, but let's carry on. Let's continue to do it. The more they hear from us, the further we'll get ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with Jen, absolutely. And also just to add that this is the perfect time right now to write, email, phone your federal representative and make a comment about this ban. Right now, it's just in a flurry, and I'm not sure why plastic single-use bottles are not on there. They are probably the biggest offender. And obviously it's got to do with lobbying from the plastics industry or the bottled beverage industry, but we need to be noisy because that's what makes the pressure and that's what will make things happen.
I would like to say that I think that the bottled water issue is really very complex, and they need to, unless they're getting rid of all plastic bottles, they need to continue to have water available in plastic bottles. Maybe not so people can buy them, you know, in bulk at a grocery store, but if you're dying of thirst and you need to go to a convenience store because there's not a water fountain around, then some people are not going to be drinking sugary pops and sugary juices. So really what we need is not just addressing the plastic water bottle issue, but all beverages in plastic.
You know, I hear that a lot, Jan, and I think about those kinds of things. What else can we do? But I also think back to our youth when we didn't have water in bottles, and we somehow managed to get from our house to grandma's house without death. And so I think a little bit of us being inconvenienced and also planning ahead. And yes, there will always be emergencies, but maybe we can work around those emergencies too. If If these single-use bottles aren't available, maybe people will have to buy the bigger ones and then pour into their own reusable container from that. And that's at least a little bit smarter. And a water wagon for festivals, so we don't have hundreds and thousands of those single-use bottles. Often the water's still sitting in them. That's water pumped from my aquifer that's absolutely wasted and never going anywhere again. So yeah, we can think around this. I don't think we need to give up to say we absolutely have to have this for emergency services. I know it is certainly a simple and convenient solution, and it is our solution right now, but we can't use it for the Band-Aid of not figuring out something else.
I just want to be clear that I'm not suggesting that we don't address it as a bigger issue. I'm only guessing on why they haven't addressed the issue of water bottles. And certainly there have been times when I've been gasping with thirst, but there's no way I'm buying a plastic bottle of water or any other beverage. So yes, I'm hoping that it will eventually be addressed.
So I just wanted to share on the ban in terms of working with governments and officials. It's not always known that once they put it out there, there's often a spot for you to share that feedback. So that's something people should be more aware of. If they see any news release, go to the government websites, do a bit of digging, find that call for your feedback and public comment. And that's the same case with this ban. They have a discussion paper, a full discussion paper that actually details some more of the science numbers into it if you're a data kind of nerd. But there's also an email address there, and I've given the link and information to the organizers of this event. So hopefully they'll share that in chat. It's until December 9th is when this feedback is open. So this is the perfect time to address all of your concerns and get them out there. Things like talking about why are plastic water bottles not included, and I'm sure other concerns you may have, or even things that you like about the ban that you want to make sure are carried out.
Okay, another question. This has to do with something that Haley brought up about using interest in reducing plastic and plastic waste as a hobby. This idea of eco-dread or it's occurred to me is seeing plastic everywhere and I guess sometimes being overwhelmed by it. I know a lot of people just, it's not a big deal, but now that I've kind of connected with StopPlastics, it pops out everywhere. On the street, I notice people's habits around plastic, and I've become that person a little bit. So they've opened to anyone about how people deal with, I guess, the eco-anxiety or eco-dread about plastic and how they cope with it.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the conversation, at least from my perspective, is I've definitely been that person. I know what you're saying, Ben, is I've been that person in my family. Christmas time is always a weird time. Like, don't give me plastic, please stop. So it's definitely something that I've found is ongoing kind of conversation, and I think I've gotten a little bit more kind to myself, like I said earlier, but it's also just kind of a timely conversation, and I'm very heartened by the amount of traction that we're seeing. So at least in comparison to 5 years ago, I'm feeling a lot better about the conversation being moved forward. I don't know how other people feel about things, but I feel slightly better. If anyone else wants to jump in about how they're feeling on the topic.
Sure, I'll just jump in to add something. Haley actually mentioned it earlier, is to be kind to yourself, and that can also apply to some of the challenges we're facing in COVID. There are some, even if you are one of these caring people who are using less plastic, you may be finding yourself forced to use more than you would want to be using. So just recognize that, but know that this is kind of a temporary situation we're in. So there's more we can do, but also remember that we know what we need to do and we know how to talk about it. So it's just with time and just acknowledge when things get stressful, but we can acknowledge it and then figure out what we can do to take action on it.
Great. We have another question from the chat. And I'm not sure if we can answer this. Are there studies investigating the effects of microplastics on health? So I saw in the documentary them talking about dioxin and how, especially ecotoxicology, how microplastics can kind of pick up other nasty chemicals in their trip in the ocean. I'm not aware of any studies specifically about how the direct health, if the body actually absorbs plastic directly or if it just goes through and has some sort of effect. I would ask Susan probably because she's most connected with I guess the science part of this. But if there's anyone in the group knows about a particular study that actually is linking plastic consumption to health effects.
Sure. I can answer it to say there isn't much we can conclusively say yet, but you can surmise it's not great to be ingesting plastics and such. From a wildlife perspective, we are seeing some impacts like in invertebrates where there's studies seeing about the impacts of microplastics. So there's some signs that it's their potential for human. One thing I do want to also talk about is, you often see that we're eating fish, we're eating plastic, and that step of how that is happening is also being studied as well. But we are finding microplastics in fish in the lab. So we know it's in wildlife, and some people eat wildlife. So there is the potential to be in our bodies, drinking water as well. There was the study about tea bags earlier this year from McGill University. So it's out there, but it's really, what is that long-term impact on humans? How do you get that number? That's a huge research question that's on a lot of people's minds right now.
I would like to say that there are not a lot of studies yet about the impact on human health. We can't imagine that it's going to be good for us, but more important to me is what it's doing to the wildlife. Why are we any more important? These are innocent animals and birds and fish and mammals. We've seen horrific pictures of that. Isn't that reason enough? Over to somebody else now. Ben?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Someone shared some pictures with me recently about a coyote who had ingested a plastic bag, a take-up bag that had some meat juice in it. And the person that shared it said this animal was probably in agony trying to pass a large plastic bag. Again, just trying to make it in the world, make it in the city. And I grew up in the Toronto area in the Lakeshore in the 70s, where I do remember there being the occasional fish kill from sewer overflow or something like that. But now you're seeing, when you go to the shore, you're seeing warnings about not ingesting the fish because of toxic elements in it. And when I do see a fisherman, I ask them, "Are you eating the fish?" And they say, "No, we just do sport fishing, and we throw them back because we know they're not good to eat," which is really unfortunate.
Terrible.
The other thing is that there has been recent evidence to suggest that for all the plastic that is floating on the ocean, there is more at the bottom of the ocean. So imagine the impact on all the life in our oceans. Anybody else want to add to that?
So while you're on, Jan, I wanted to ask you particularly about StopPlastics success or work with the bag ban in particular? So the single-use plastic that you get at the grocery store, what has Stop Plastics efforts been on that?
My icon for there, okay. Well, I think the good news is that things are happening federally. And so the federal government's decided that we're banning plastic bags across the country. So we have collected thousands of Stop Plastic, or Ban the Bag postcards, and we have personally taken them to City Hall. And so, yeah, we're happy that that's happening. We're doing a lot of educating around alternatives to plastic, and we're going to have to regroup and decide what we're doing next. So, yay, there's a victory for us. We're happy about that. Over to you, Ben.
Okay, getting through all these questions, this is fantastic. So one of the questions that we had, Stop Plastic did participate in a brand audit with Greenpeace and Don't Mess with the Dawn, where trash was picked up, but in addition to that, the name of the company that was producing the plastic package was Rathwell, and Nestle and Coca-Cola and Tim Hortons were at the top of those lists. So this is a question for the group, is what can we do to directly influence the big producers of plastic? That's for anyone.
I very frequently am writing letters to producers. I, buy a hand blender. It comes in a cardboard box, and goodness gracious, the cord comes in its plastic bag and the blender comes in its plastic bag with instructions to wash it. What gives? So I write frequently letters to big companies. I take photographs of things, and I'm always letter writing. And I encourage people to do so. Do you want to add something, Karen?
I do. I just think that's the best plan. We have to get noisier, and we do have to just put a little effort into making some noise to these huge corporations and put some pressure on them, because it has to be cradle to grave planning for all of this plastic. It's not good anymore to leave this problem for our youth that are coming up. And yeah, so that's all I'll add at this point.
I'll just say too that, it's to the point where even these producers can't ignore that we know, right? So that it's through things like brand audits that have brought the awareness, and these letter writing and constant, showing of the images, they can't ignore it anymore. And that means hopefully they're more open to this, more receptive to the conversation in the past. So keep talking and keep writing letters and keep sharing cleanup images and all of this information so that it becomes put into an actual concrete policy.
So the next question has to do with fast fashion. And I suppose if there's anything positive coming out of kind of this lockdown that we're in, is I'm wearing some pretty old yucky clothes. I put something half decent on today, but it's about not buying a lot of stuff and about buying quality. It's about, doing your laundry in cold water, about not putting it on a high spin, about not washing it all the time. Like, wash it when it's stinky and when it's dirty, and just don't be throwing it, into the laundry basket, always at the end of the day. And I would say there are alternatives to buying laundry detergent in containers. You can get refills, as already been mentioned, and you can also buy just little sheets of laundry soap that go in that come in paper packaging. So don't buy lots of stuff, wear it until it's dirty. Look at getting your clothes recycled. There are places that you can take fabrics to get recycled. And I see that Haley wants to jump in. So over to you, Haley.
Yeah, I agree with all the things you're saying. Like, it's about how you care for the clothes that you already own. But I think it's also, for someone like myself, I find I am tempted constantly. I used to live at Queen and Spadina, where there's a ton of really nice clothes all the time, and just walking down the street and seeing other people, I'm like, ooh, I want that. Ooh, this would be nice. But I've also found that I've kind of defined my own style within what I can get from vintage stores a little bit. So that's how I've gotten around things. And luckily the current styles are a little bit vintage, so I can actually get real vintage or secondhand things and be in style. But in terms of things that you do need to buy firsthand, I often do a ton of research. Even the umbrella that I bought, I was like, what can I find that is either really durable or has a lifetime guarantee warranty? So I did end up finding an umbrella that has a lifetime guarantee, and they have a built-in recycling program where you can send back a broken umbrella to them, and they will dismantle it for its pieces, recycle it, and send you a brand new one in place of it, because they just have built it into their business model. So it takes a little bit of work, but there are often a lot of really key pieces that you can find that are lifetime products, and it does really pay off, both in the pocket and environmentally.
So there's two more questions from the chat, and then I think we'll go around, and if there's anyone wants to respond personally to just finish up, we'll do that. The two questions are, did Toronto add over 9 million to the waste budget because some countries began to refuse taking our waste? I'm going to say possibly yes. And what is Ontario's plan to make products responsible for dealing with their waste, and how can this be enforced to companies from outside of Canada? So those two questions from the chat.
Don't know.
I'm just looking at kind of some highlights of the new recycling plan, which I think is the reference to the Ontario question. I don't have too much information in terms of how. No, I personally, it might be in there, the extended producer responsibility, but it should be built in that there's like diversion targets, and the data would get reported back on where they're hitting it. But the question I have and want to look back into it is, what are the diversion targets that they're hitting? What are those being proposed, and are those adequate targets are those targets adequate to what we feel would make a significant contribution? Yeah.
One of the things I'm doing
Great.
on a personal level is
Just
not
go ahead,
buying
Jen.
products that are plastic. I want a funnel. I'm going to buy a metal funnel. I want a strainer. I'm not buying a plastic one. So certainly, I don't know how we're going to affect change, from outside of the country. I mean, a lot of products are manufactured outside, and we can write to the headquarters, but certainly I can personally make my own choices about what I want to buy. Okay, over to you, Ben.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go around to everyone if there's anything they want to promote or highlight. I'll just go make sure everyone has a chance to kind of about a minute worth of time. Just go ahead and share what you want to share.
I just want to add a couple of things before we close, and one of them is regarding that fashion. And now that we know about the microfibers and polar fleece, That's certainly a good material to avoid, and the man-made products because of the plastic fibers. And I was interested to learn, I think it was in your video, Microplastic Madness, about the dryer and how many of those filaments, those plastic particles, are sent out into the air from the dryer. So to use a clothesline is a great idea. In fact, I was surprised to hear and horrified to learn and think about the dust in my house, in my coffee sitting waiting for plastic particles to fall into it. So I'm becoming more aware that all that's out there, even though I don't see it.
I know up in Parry Sound, they're doing a study where they're actually putting filters onto washing machines, and they're collecting microfibers. And hopefully, based on that study, those filters will become more readily available to the general public. So that's exciting news.
Yeah, I can actually segue. That's one of our solutions-based research projects. One of our team members is working with Georgian Bay Forever on this project. So if you go to our trash team website, the organizers don't have the link for this, but when you're on our page, if you go under trash team solutions-based research, you can get more details on this microfiber work that we've been doing. It's a great example of combining a solution, but also with community. But I'll kind of segue into wrapping up in terms of the perspective from the U of T trash team. It's been great, to be able to share what we're doing. And our main goal is to, educate, inform you, empower you, and inspire you to make changes. So if you're on our website, I would love to direct you to, we have a trash team tips page where we have cute little images about waste reduction. And we also created something called our solutions hierarchy, which are some words we've also already talked about. These are steps and actions you can take to keep waste out of landfill, most of this being plastic, but it's thinking about refusing what you don't need, refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and then unfortunately, ultimately landfill. So we have a video that goes through that you can share with your friends, but it's really just being informed about end use things and how more sustainable they are. And I just noted there's a question here about the work we're doing about microfibers. Yes. So I think I just answered that question. It's working with Georgian Bay Forever, and they've been installing these devices onto washing machines that are filters that capture the microfibers before they have a chance of getting into the waterways. And that goes back to this fast fashion conversation as well. Not only are we not wanting to buy this type of product because it's a little bit wasteful, but it's less durable clothing. So potentially more likely when you're laundering it to become more microfibers than other fabrics.
Okay, I'm just going to go super quickly. My takeaway would be, this was from a function I did probably 4 years ago, and I've kept it since. Just little happy birthday cutouts that people were placing on tables to celebrate. Don't do this. Don't go to the dollar store. Make your own crafts. Celebrate stuff without having to buy plastic. Because this stuff, I've got no idea to do with this stuff. Doesn't make anyone's birthday any happier. So that's my takeaway is you don't need to celebrate with plastic. You can find alternatives or reuse stuff like this. I'm going to give a chance to the rest of the people to speak, and then we're just going to do a wrap up.
I would say that one of the things I consider is anytime I'm making a purchase, I wonder, yes, it's convenient, but am I prepared to keep that item in my backyard forever and ever and ever and ever? So I would never be buying those happy birthday plastic things. I would never buy a whole bunch of things because I imagine having to store it myself in my backyard forever. Haley, do you want to finish up?
Sure, yeah. So I guess my closing words or whatever, the takeaway I'd love to leave with everybody is just to remember that you have power within your political systems as well. And being an engaged citizen is a really good way to get change made. And I think that even just remembering that you can create your own organizations too, and create your own communities. And it's a little bit harder these days online, but reaching out to like-minded people through events like this can be a really positive thing. And I think just having fun with it is really important to keep the energy going and to make sure that we don't have that kind of climate distress feeling all the time. So you have power and have fun.
I think that's about it. I wanted to say a bunch of thank yous. Number one to Elena from EcoFair. Thank you so much for your organizational skills and all of your work that has gone into this showcase. Thank you to Cafeteria Culture for, I will get to you, Karen. Cafeteria Culture for making this video available. I want to give a special thank you to Allison from Zero Waste Toronto, Zero Waste Hub Toronto, for all the work that she's done in just helping out, and Donna Marie from StopPlastics for all the work that she has done organizing and emailing and advocating and putting this, basically making this happen. If anyone else wants to add to that, please do. And then I'll pass it over to Lee.
Ben, I'm just going to add thank you so much for that terrific video, that documentary. I think it's super. I'm certainly going to refer people to it when I do visits, if and when that happens, or often we get questions from teachers. So it's very current, and it was a wonderful journey those kids went on with lots of great experts and new information. So thank you I was so pleased to watch it, and I've learned a lot from our plastic panel too. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I think that wraps up the film discussion today. Thank you very much for all your insightful comments, and I really enjoyed the film too. So I'm so glad that it resonated with so many people. So I'd just like to close off today on behalf of EcoFair Toronto. I'd like to thank all the event organizers, presenters, as well as the behind the scenes volunteers that have made today's event such a great success, and also to thank all of you for participating. We would love to have your feedback, so please take a moment to share your thoughts. There's a link to our short and easy EcoFair survey in the chat, and everybody is encouraged to fill it out, the audience, the presenters, and the volunteers. We want to hear from everyone. Don't forget to visit the EcoFair Toronto website to explore the other exciting workshops, webinars, and films in the schedule, as well as the eco tours you can do in neighborhoods across the city, the exhibitor showcase, highlighting 40 sustainable organizations and businesses and their 1-minute videos, as well as checking out the family-friendly climate pledges and the eco fun and games. We hope you all enjoyed this event and that you'll be back for more. So visit ecofairtoronto.org. Events continue until the EcoFair's grand finale at 2 p.m. on Sunday, November 8th. So I'll hope you'll join us for that. Together, we can make this a green new decade. So let's celebrate, learn, enjoy, and then take action. So thanks for coming, and we hope you'll come again.
So people are staying on for a little bit of a chat. Upset.